Hello grade 12s, welcome to this English home language lesson. Today we're going to do an exam guide on paper 1. My name is Marinda Swanepoel and I'm very excited to spend some time with you today and help you prepare for paper 1. Let's get started. By the end of the lesson, we will have achieved the following. We will look at the mark allocation and the duration of the paper. We will unpack the topics and the marks. We will look at the overall structure of the paper, as well as the cognitive levels, the difficulty of the questions. We will also revise our action verbs and look at types of questions that you can expect within the paper. And lastly, we will look at general challenges and tips. The structure of our lesson will be the following. We'll look at the mark allocation, topics, the overall structure, cognitive levels, action verbs, types of questions, and then again, general challenges and tips. Paper 1 is 70 marks. You will be allocated 2 hours to complete this paper. The paper is structured as follows. Reading for meaning and understanding, or the comprehension, is 30 marks. This consists of 43% of the paper, and the suggested time allocation is 50 minutes. The summary is section B, question 2. It has 10 marks, it is 14% of the paper, and you should spend no more than 30 minutes on this question. Lastly, language structures and conventions. This is also 30 marks, 43% of the paper, and you are allocated 40 minutes to complete this section. If we go into a little bit more detail, the overall structure of the paper, question 1, section A, is reading for meaning and understanding, 30 marks. This is the comprehension. Then section B, question 2, is the summary for 10 marks. And then section C consists of 3 questions. Question 3 is advertising, analyzing advertising for 10 marks. Question 4 is understanding other aspects of media, the cartoon, for 10 marks. And question 5 is using language correctly, also 10 marks. The cognitive levels are divided as follows. Level 1 and 2, the easy questions, the literal and reorganization, will consist 40 marks of 40% of this paper for a total of 28 marks. Level 3, inference, will also be 40% and again 28 marks. Level 4 and 5 again are combined, the evaluation and appreciation, and this is 20%. This is what you'll need to be able to do if you're aiming for that distinction. Now let's take a look at some action verbs. These are very important for you to know so that you can be successful in answering the questions. Firstly, a very simple one, account for. This just means give a reason or say why. Make sure that you answer it fully. Then, of course, explain. Here you focus on the given lines and you provide detailed reasons. You'll see that questions will have a textual reference, and that's what I'm referring to when I say the given lines. Then, of course, discuss. Here you will explore the text from different viewpoints using examples from the given text, but explain your understanding clearly. Justify is a term that you should be familiar with, and this means to give reasons to support your answer. Again, the reasons will be in the text. Comment on is our next action verb. This means, what do you think of something? Here you provide evidence from the text to support your opinion. And then lastly, critically comment. This question expects you to give a detailed analysis of the required information with evidence from the text as above, but then your responses must go beyond the text. This will normally be a higher order question. Now, before we continue, we're going to go for a quick break. We'll be right back. Welcome back, learners, to this exam guide on paper 1. Now let's jump into our next aspect, and that will be the types of questions. Types of questions that you can expect in question 1, which of course is reading for meaning and understanding, the comprehension. This question will include all the cognitive levels. Again, it's 30 marks. So if we divide that, 40% will be 12 marks of the cognitive levels, the lower order questions, then middle order, also 40%, 12 marks, and then 20% or 6 marks, higher order questions. More types of questions that you can expect here in detail, recalling and reorganization. In these questions, the answers are found directly in the text. You simply use the textual reference, whether it's a paragraph or a line reference, go back to your reading passage and find the answer. 40% is making inferences, so here the answers are not directly stated in the text, but a good understanding of the text is necessary, and if you combine that with the information that's in the text, you will be able to answer this question. So work out the meaning that is conveyed within the specific text. 20% will be evaluation and appreciation. Again, this is our higher order questions. Here, insight and application are required. These questions test your ability to apply, analyze, and evaluate the information. So again, you're using the information in the text, but you have to analyze and evaluate. General comprehension questions. This is another type of questions. So here, these questions test your understanding of the text and your ability to identify and extract specific information. Again, you're going to use the comprehension passage, text A or text B as your reference. This also tests your ability to use the information you have read to follow an argument, to draw conclusions and understand the writer's intention. A question could be, analyze the writer's intention in including a specific aspect. Then we'll have vocabulary questions. Here, very simply, we test word meanings. The question might say, explain the meaning of, and then give you words from the text. Then thirdly, we have the technical type of question. Here, they test the style and presentation of the text, the construction, and a question might be, discuss the writer's use of a rhetorical question. When we move to section B, question 2, summarizing in your own words, this is everyone's favorite question. Again, all cognitive levels are included. It's a total of 10 marks, 40% lower, 40% middle order, and 20% higher order. Here you will be allocated 7 marks for 7 facts and then 3 marks for your use of language. You will summarize 7 ideas from text C, which will be the summary text, and you have to summarize it in paragraph form. The word limit is 90 words. Question 3 in section C is analyzing advertising. Again, in this question, we have all the cognitive levels. It's a total of 10 marks, so 4 marks lower order, 4 marks middle order, and 2 marks or 20% higher order questions. 8 marks will be asked on the following. This will include advertising techniques and their effectiveness in the context of the advertisement, how the impact of techniques will enforce the message of the advertisement, and then how visual and verbal elements support the message. As you can see, the message of the advertisement is very important. Also included in question 3 will be 2 marks on language, so either vocabulary development or sentence structures. Question 4 is the cartoon. It is all cognitive levels for a total of 10 marks, and again you'll see 40% or 4 marks lower order question, 40% or 4 marks middle order questions, and then 20% or 2 marks for the higher order question. 8 marks will be asked on the following: the use of persuasive techniques to convey the message of the cartoon, the use of techniques and their effectiveness in the context, again, of the cartoon, the impact of persuasive techniques on the message, and then also how visual and verbal elements support the message and also create humor. There will be 2 marks on the following: vocabulary development and language use or sentence structures. The last question in paper 1 is question 5, using language correctly. 10 marks, and again, all cognitive levels. 4 marks for lower order questions, 4 marks for middle order questions, and 2 marks for higher order. The length of the given text will be about 150 to 200 words, and there will be 5 marks on vocabulary development and language use, and 5 marks on sentence structures and the organization of the texts. Popular types of questions that you can expect in question 5 include the following: the identification and the function of the different parts of speech, so verbs, nouns, adjectives, etc. Concord errors, normally they will ask you to identify or correct a concord error. The use of prefixes and suffixes within the text or to change a word meaning. The use of phrases and clauses. Ambiguity, of course, something with a double meaning. Then redundancy or tautology, that is the overuse of something, saying something twice, like reversing backwards, where there will be in the text and you have to remove that. Then, of course, active and passive, you know this from your primary school days, direct and indirect speech or reported speech. Formal and informal expressions, they might ask you to rewrite an informal expression in a more formal way. Then there will be questions on sentence structure, the function of punctuation, that's very important. They won't ask you what a punctuation mark is or the definition, but why it is used in the text. So look at the context. Then the use of tenses, providing antonyms or synonyms in the context of the text. And lastly, the malapropism, when a word is incorrectly used, normally with a humorous effect. Now, before we continue with the next part of our lesson, we're going to go for a quick ad break. We'll be right back. Welcome back to this lesson on Exam Guide for Paper 1. Let's look at some general challenges and some tips for you to use in your Paper 1. Challenges for question 1 include the following: a lack of understanding the text. Now remember, this question is called Reading for Meaning and Understanding. Take your time. I suggest using the 10 minutes reading time to read the text and the questions if you have time for that, and make sure you understand. The text will be about 700 to 800 words. That is a big chunk of text. So take your time, take it sentence for sentence or paragraph for paragraph. Make sure that you eat the elephant bit by bit. There will also be a text B, a visual, and carefully focus on understanding and the meaning behind the visual. Then another challenge we see is incomplete answer scripts. Please use the suggested time allocation that you can find with the instructions in your question paper and manage your time effectively. We also find a lot of incomplete answers. This is very important and will give you your best chance at success if you answer everything that a question requires. So use the mark allocation as a guide, identify and answer all aspects of the question. Then misinterpretation or misunderstanding questions. This is a big problem, grade 12s. Make sure that you understand the action verbs so that you understand what the examiner expects of you. Underline these words, make sure that you refer back to the text so that you get the correct context to answer the question. The comparative question is the last question in the comprehension, in reading for meaning and understanding. It normally carries a weight of 4 marks and will ask you to compare text B to different elements from text A. Answer it fully. This is actually an easy question. Make sure you read the question thoroughly and ensure that you answer all aspects. So it could be referring to text A's title, a specific paragraph in text A, and then text B. If you refer to those 3 elements and you add a comment, that will give you 4 easy marks. So just go and find the similarities in each of those, because there will be similarities. You don't have to wonder if there are similarities. There are. Find the similarities and make sure that you answer in detail. Start your answer with the title and summarize that. Then you can also say the specific paragraph of text B and summarize that, text A, summarize the essence, and then again look at the message of text B, the different elements, summarize that. Structure your answer in detail so that the marker can clearly see where you have addressed each of these elements. And don't forget a comment. A big problem that we find as well, not following instructions. Please do not assume that you know what a question is asking. Remember that there are questions at the beginning of the exam paper, at the beginning of each question, and then each individual question also has instructions. Please follow those instructions. Read carefully and follow them at each question. Another big problem we find is general answers. Now, general answers, vague answers kind of go together. You must use the textual reference. When the examiner has included a line reference or a paragraph reference at a question, that means you have to go back to that line or paragraph because that is the starting point. That's where your answer should be grounded. Use that to structure your answer and always provide specific, detailed answers. Use the text to provide evidence to support your answer. Imagine yourself as a lawyer in court and you are arguing a case. You will have to have evidence. Please find the evidence in the text because it's there and use it in your answer. Also, if you're using words from the text, please put them in quotation marks and don't, this links to our next topic, don't quote gigantic chunks of text, just take little bits that you need. Lifting means copying from the text without using quotation marks or just big pieces of text that make no sense in reference to the question. So don't copy word for word from the text. Use specific words that fit into your answer to support your argument, and that will help you to give full answers that are grounded and will get you good marks. You will need exam writing competencies to complete this paper successfully. Make sure that you apply all of these skills while you are writing. Paper 1 has 5 questions. Question 1, reading for meaning and understanding. The comprehension is 43% and the suggested time allocation for that question is 50 minutes. Question 2, of course, the summary is 14% of the paper and you should spend about 30 minutes on this question. Questions 3, 4 and 5, the advertisement, cartoon and language are each 14.33% and you should spend 15 minutes each on question 3 and 4 and then 10 minutes on question 5. The first question we will look at is question 1.3 in comprehension. The question says, refer to paragraph 3, suggest why the writer starts the paragraph with a question. Now this is a style question. You will have to use your knowledge of rhetorical questions and their functions and apply that to the context. You can see here the paragraph has, why is humour so often the first port of call when South African media users find themselves in stormy seas? There is the question. So you know rhetorical questions function to draw the reader's attention, and now you must use that knowledge and apply it to the context. Of course, rhetorical questions engages the reader's interest or it introduces the writer's argument. So take that knowledge that you have and apply it to the context of the paper and the specific line reference or paragraph reference that the question has. Then we have a similar question. Question 1.4, comment on the writer's use of rhetorical questions. So when you comment on, you have to say why it is used and how it is functional within the context of the question paper. Again, you'll use your knowledge of rhetorical questions and their functions and apply that to the specific context. Here you can see, so which is it? There's a rhetorical question. Is cancel culture an important tool for social justice or a new form of merciless mob intimidation? Another rhetorical question. And then, or does the very idea of being cancelled work to deter potentially bad behavior? 3 rhetorical questions in one paragraph, that is definitely a technique the writer is using. He wants you to engage in the article and in the topic, but he also presents different views, and he introduces this to the writer, or to the reader, sorry. The rhetorical questions again raise awareness. It shows the issue. You can see there are multiple options for this answer. They prepare the reader for the discussion on both sides of the argument. It's important for you to note that in a home language comprehension text in the passage, there will be 2 sides to the argument, 2 different viewpoints on the specific topic. Look out for that because there will be questions on that. Question 1.6 is a different style of question. We have our verb of questioning, discuss how, and then very important, diction. So diction is word choice. Discuss how the diction in this paragraph conveys the writer's attitude. The writer chooses specific words to show how he feels about a certain topic. So make sure you look out for words that show meaning and feeling. So what is his attitude towards mainstream media? To answer a diction question, you will go to the paragraph, you can see it's here, and you will find words that show strong emotion, strong attitude. Here we see tightly controlled, widespread distrust, and then there is an although that shows maybe a contrast, and here again widespread corruption. So even without going through the entire paragraph, we can see that the writer's attitude towards the mainstream media shows distrust because there's corruption and because it's so tightly controlled. Make sure that when you're answering a diction question, you prove your answer and you quote specific words from that paragraph in your answer. So we're looking for attitude. The first part of the answer, you'll see it shows the writer's distrust. So there is the attitude mark. Then you can see I have here diction from the paragraph quoted to prove that he doesn't trust mainstream media. And of course, you must have a little discussion or a comment. What does this diction show you? It shows that there is a lack of respect on the part of the citizens for mainstream media. Remember, you'll get a mark for the identification of the attitude and then 2 marks here for 1 example of diction. Of course, you can include more examples. Critically discuss the diction. So when you critically discuss, you have to analyze in detail. Again, we're looking at diction, so the same applies as in the previous question. You'll go back to the paragraph and follow those same steps. So here you can see again the effect that it has, the extreme effect of cancel culture. Here are examples of diction quoted to support your answer in context, evidence from the text. And then here, the critical comment, the detrimental nature of the lasting consequences is highlighted. This would be 3 marks for a critical discussion on 2 examples of diction. So it's also safe to add at least 2 examples in your answer. The next question is assess the validity of the writer's conclusion. So when you assess, you're looking at whether it's effective, and validity focuses on if it's valid. Is the argument true? And in this case, is the conclusion fitting to the text? Now, an easy way to answer this is look at the entire text, look at the message, the main idea of the text, and then specifically look at paragraph 10, as this question shows you, and see how the conclusion fits with the rest of the argument. If we look at the answer, the conclusion is valid. The writer cautions the reader to take pavement media seriously. Then he also recommends an understanding of cancel culture. He wants us to address current problems, and then he ends the paragraph with a paradox. So you can see here that this idea takes the focus of paragraph 10 and then links it to the rest of the article. The marking guideline says 2 valid aspects are discussed. So make sure when there's a 3-mark question that you have at least 2 aspects and that they are well discussed and supported. Question 1.7 is another comparative question. Here we have discuss. So again, we're going to look at different viewpoints. The extent. Now this word is very important. It means that you can look at arguments for and against. You can have a mixed response. So you can say that paragraphs 9 and 10 support the title and give evidence, and you can also argue against that, of course, with evidence from the text. So you'll take these 3 elements, it's 3 marks, and you can see that there are 3 elements, the title and 2 paragraphs. So you will refer to each of those paragraphs and to the title. Look at the essence of each of these elements, their meaning, what is the message that they're trying to convey, and then look for similarities between each and link those 3 together. You can see, guide your answer by inserting references in your answer so that the marker can clearly see what you are referring to. They support the title, they show questions on the impact of cancel culture as a form of social justice by transforming attitudes, and then there's an however, so you may have a mixed response. That's very important. He acknowledges the 2 sides, that it does not bring about the change, and that victims will forever be held hostage to their trauma. Therefore, according to Aaron Rose, cancel culture can never be a tool for social justice, as we see in the title. You'll see in the marking directive, you'll only get full marks if you refer to paragraph 9, 10, and the title. And of course, include references, make sure your answer is well substantiated. The next question focuses on a visual element. So text B is a visual text, but it is also a comprehension text. The question says comment on, so give your opinion based on the information that is included in the text. Comment on how the visual and the verbal cues convey the message. Again, we have a 3-mark question, 3 elements to discuss. Again, you'll look for similarities between each of these elements and then link those 3 elements to get your 3 marks. The poor character is hemmed in by the looming monster. That's a visual element. And then we have the grim reaper, the outstretched arms. The cemetery in the background represents death. So what do you see and what does it mean? Now link it to the verbal cues, a rock and a hard place. And what does that mean? The situation is hopeless. And then a final comment, there is no way out of the dire situation. Make sure you refer to each of the elements included in the question. Then question 1.11 is the comparative question. Critically discuss, so again we're looking at different viewpoints and we're going to give a critical comment, a critical discussion. Again, here's that word extent, to which text B reinforces the writer's views in paragraph 9 of text A. So make sure you unpack the question, know what you have to do, and remember that this little word extent gives you the option to have a mixed response, so you can argue for and against. Make sure you refer to text B and to paragraph 9. So here we have paragraph 9 of text A highlights the trauma caused by COVID-19. Text B, do you see the markers in the answer to guide your answer to show what you are referring to? The crisis of poverty and hunger, of course, is presented in that visual. And then, of course, it's linked to the COVID-19 pandemic. There is a quote from paragraph 9, the infected and the dead, and another link to the visual, the cemetery that represents death in text B. And this, of course, the comment shows the seriousness of the situation. You could also have a negative answer and then mix those 2. So paragraph 9 discusses how humor is a coping mechanism. Again, there's quotes included to prove the answer. However, so there's a contrast. So you may disagree and say text B foregrounds the pain and suffering that is caused by the COVID-19 pandemic and that there's nothing humorous about this. So when you're doing the comparative question, make sure that you look for similarities, but you may also find differences, and those will be accepted if you prove them in your answer. So that was a few tips on the comprehension, and before we continue with section B and C, we're going to go for a quick ad break. I will see you in just a little while. Welcome back, learners, to this exam guide on paper 1. We're going to focus next on section B, the summary. When you find yourself at the summary question, you'll always see that it starts with a statement. It's important to take your time and to make sure that you understand the statement. Text C discusses the mysteries of the teenage brain. So there we have the statement. It introduces what the text is about. Then comes an instruction. Summarize in your own words how parents can better understand their teenage child. Now you'll see that this is printed in bold, and it will be printed in bold in your question paper. And that is the focus of your summary. That's the question that you have to answer. Remember that a summary asks you to take a lot of information and take out all of the unnecessary information and only focus on the most important. This part is the most important, and that is what they want you to focus on. Make sure you read carefully and you focus on that. Very important, there are instructions. So your summary should include 7 points because you'll get 7 marks for 7 facts, and you may not exceed 90 words. It's very important that you follow the requirements and that you do not exceed the word limit of the summary. Your summary must also be presented in a fluent paragraph. Now, this actually benefits you because you can add a few more points in there because it's a paragraph and not point form like in first editional language. So you might add an extra fact because you want a backup, just in case you repeated something or one of your facts are incorrect. It's a good idea to always have a backup. You are not required to include a title for the summary, don't bother with that, and then indicate the word count. Please, learners, be accurate in your counting and be honest. The marker will count the words and verify that you did not exceed the word count, and it's just annoying when a learner lies about the word count. Okay, so make sure that when you're reading, you focus on the bold words that they've given in the question and use your question paper as a resource. You don't need to waste time in the summary by writing a draft or doing a planning, as we see some learners do. Use your question paper. You can see here's the question and use it as a guide. Take your highlighter or a pen and underline as a resource and then number them, and when you do your summary on your question paper, you just take the information. If we use one example, this is the little introduction. Understanding what is happening to their child is the first step. So here we can always also see there is the first step, understanding what is happening. I like putting a little number 1 there, and as I'm going along, I number the facts to see by the end how many facts I have, and then later on, I can simply take this information and put it on the question paper. If I show you another example, even more important to understand is that the brain of the teenager is only about 80% complete. So that's another important thing parents need to know to understand the teenager. And this you will continue throughout. When you finish that, make sure that your points focus on the question, write your summary, count the words, and move on. The summary is a quick win that will score you high marks if you practice how to do it. Here you can see I have the answers. It's not fully developed, and that will give you a mark. And then the same with the rest of the points. Remember, you also get 3 marks for language, depending on how many facts you have correct. Now we're moving on to section C, analyzing advertising, and 3.1 says, describe the service being advertised. This is for 2 marks, and you can expect the first question to be a little bit easier. This, however, is not an identify question. It says describe, so make sure you don't simply state what is being advertised, but you also give detail. This advertisement is a direct mail advertisement, and it's a service that delivers products to customers so that they can see and feel and taste the product in person instead of seeing it on a screen. So direct mail center, it's from the post office, and if you go and study this, you'll find the details about the service. Make sure that you include detail in your answer. It's a mail service, and what does the service do? It delivers post directly to clients. So identification and description, because that's what the question requires. Then question 3.3, in your view, does the visual image effectively convey the message of the advertisement? Now remember, advertisements have visual and text elements, and you will be asked questions on both of those elements and how they link to the message. So make sure you study, you find the similarities, and you link the two together. Remember also that even though it's visual, you may and you must refer and take evidence from the text to support your answer. You'll see I have in different colors. The advertiser wants to encourage the consumer to use direct marketing because it promotes immediate marketing. That's the message. And then here, the picture shows enjoying the experience one can have with direct marketing. It shows the sensory experience. There's also the lollipop is in the foreground. And then the thought bubbles also invite the reader and emphasizes the sensory experience. So make sure you focus on all the elements that are required in the question and the message and how those link. You can also have a negative answer. There's no direct relationship. Sweets are universally desirable. It could be spam or irrelevant. And then you substantiate your answer just in the negative form. Then question 3.3, in your view. This invites you to give an opinion, but of course your opinion must be based on what's in the text. Does the written text of the advertisement support the visual? The same thing we did in the previous question. You will look at the written text, you will find similarities that link these two elements together. So this is about sustainable fishing, and of course we see some fish here in the visual. Make sure you refer to the text and the visual. Then we go to question 4, the cartoon. Explain how, so you have to give detail, Charlie Brown's mood is conveyed. Now mood is a feeling, and the question asks you how it is conveyed, how it is shown in frame 3 specifically. Follow the instructions at the question and make sure that you include all the elements in your answer, and of course focus on frame 3 specifically. Here you can see Charlie Brown looks quite happy. He has a smile and he says Lucy is going to be proud of him. It is his year of decision. So what is his mood? He seems quite happy, and then of course give reasons to support that answer. So you'll see here he's happy, 1 mark for the mood. And how do you know? What did you see that proves this? The beaming smile, the desire to change, the jaunty step, all of these elements tell us, the reader, that he indeed is in a mood of happiness. 1 mark for the mood and 1 mark for the explanation. Now 4.3 is comment critically, so you have to analyze in detail the effectiveness of frame 10 in the context of the cartoon. So how the whole cartoon works together with frame 10 and is effective in supporting the message. So in this cartoon, Charlie is very optimistic. An easy way is to say what happens at the beginning of the cartoon and then what happens at the end and link those two together. So because Lucy is so negative in frame 10, he abandons his decision. He is defeated by her fatalistic attitude. And this shows us, here is the comment, his weakness adds to the anticlimax. You may also have a no answer. He asks for validation from Lucy, but he's sidelined by her opinionated, self-absorbed personality. And there is an ironic conclusion because he is a victim of his own question. 4.5 is very similar to this. Discuss how humor is created. So give a detailed analysis of the humor in the cartoon. I always imagine that you tell a joke to a friend and they don't understand the joke and you have to explain why it's funny. The same technique applies here. You look at the whole cartoon and see the expected elements and then explain where the humor is. Here, Tandy didn't do her homework and she says that the dog ate her homework and the teacher sends her to the virtual principal's office. So even though this is a virtual school, she uses a typical excuse for not doing her homework, and she goes to the principal's office. So the teacher is quite sarcastic at the end, and this creates humor because it's not a normal situation, but she gets a normal punishment for that. Now let's move on to question 5, the language question. It's very important that you study your language skills and rules and that you can use that in the exam because it really is worth your while. Make sure that you take your time and read carefully to find all of the errors and make the changes that you need to do. So the first question, rewrite the first sentence so that it's grammatically correct. There is a mistake and you have to find it. You will find the mistake if you just take your time. A TikToker with a username @Paprice shared a video of a gadget they encountered while at an Airbnb. Here you can see a TikToker, which is a singular person, but here we have the plural pronoun they. So that is where the error is. You have to rewrite the sentence and simply correct it by using he or she. You could also remove the pronoun and the sentence will read, shared a video, a TikToker with the username @Paprice shared a video of a gadget encountered while at an Airbnb. Another grammatical error question is this example. We have the same kind of question. Again, read carefully. Here, more important, you've managed to survive the devastating multi-wave tsunami that we've been calling 2020. So the error is here, more importantly. In this case, important is an adjective, but it needs to be an adverb. So you simply correct. You don't have to rewrite because the question says correct. Then we have a punctuation error in the sentence. Read carefully and look at all of the punctuation marks, whether they are there or whether they need to be there. Follow the rules and apply your knowledge to the context. In this case, the error is in the word hosts because hosts need an apostrophe. So here it could either be a singular host, their air conditioner, or plural hosts. This shows singular or plural possession, so that's why the apostrophe needs to be there. Giving an antonym is the next question of boomed in the context of the sentence. That's very important. You replace, of course, an antonym, opposite meaning, but it must fit into the sentence. Over the years, hotel alternatives have boomed in popularity for being a more affordable option for travelers on a budget. You find a word with the opposite meaning and replace it within the sentence. Make sure that it fits. So decline, plummeted, or any other valid alternative will be accepted. Then a synonym, provide a suitable synonym. Remember the word with the same meaning for global. And here we see global, of course, very simple, very easy question. Worldwide, universal, international, or even the world. The next question asks you to convert the above sentence to the passive voice. Now, it's very easy if you know the steps how to change a sentence from active to passive or from passive to active. My advice is find the verb. Airbnb is filling a very important gap in the market. Is filling is my verb. Then you can ask who is filling, that's the subject, and what are they filling? A very important gap in the market, that's your object. You'll start with the object, you'll change the verb, adjust the verb, and add by, and then add your subject. Very, very simple. A very important gap in the market is being filled by Airbnb. Here you have the opposite where you have to change it from the passive voice to the active voice. You follow those same steps, adjust the verb, and you will be successful. Healthcare practitioners have promoted these kinds of changes for years. These kinds of changes have been promoted by healthcare practitioners for years. Before we continue the rest of this lesson, we're going to go for a quick ad break. I'll see you in just a little bit. Welcome back, learners, to this exam guide on paper 1. I have some final thoughts, a few tips for you to keep in mind when you're writing paper 1. First of all, use your 10 minutes of reading time fruitfully. Spend that reading the comprehension passage or the summary, depending on which question you're going to start with. Make sure that you read all of the instructions. You'll find instructions at the beginning of the paper, at the beginning of each question, and that at each individual question. Make notes on the exam paper. Use it to help you with your answering and use it as a resource. Do not waste time on question 2. Again, use the paper as a resource, highlight or underline the facts on the paper, and then simply write your summary. Always use past papers to help you see how questions are phrased and to practice answering these questions and understanding what's required. Write neatly and legibly. Organize your answer book. Make sure you do a new question on a new page, that you leave lines open between answers, and make it accessible for the marker to see what you've written and to allocate your marks. Use the suggested time allocation at the beginning of the question paper. You'll find the times. Use that and make sure you manage your time efficiently. Always focus on the patterns of questions, and you'll do this when you do past exam papers. You'll recognize patterns and you'll know what to expect. Always use the text to support your answer, whether it's the verbal in text A, the visual in text B, summary, the advertisement, the cartoon. Refer to the text, give evidence in your answers, and always be specific and give detail. That's all we have time for today, grade 12s. I hope that this has helped you and that you'll take these skills into your next Paper 1 exam and be very successful. Thank you so much for joining me. Goodbye.